You never forget the sound of a service dog when its training breaks, not out of fear, but out of a desperate, overwhelming urgency that tears through the fabric of discipline. Imagine the scene, the quiet, controlled environment of a military checkpoint at dawn, everything routine, everything measured until a transport bus unloads a solitary soldier. Suddenly, the silence is annihilated by a K9, a powerful detection dog named Atlas, who snaps into an aggressive, trembling fury, his gaze fixed not on the soldier's face, but on his worn canvas duffel bag. His bark slices the crisp morning air, sharp, insistent, vibrating, with an almost pleading desperation that chills every officer to the bone. This isn't just an alert, it's a profound emotional accusation, forcing the soldier to freeze, his initial confusion swiftly replaced by the shadow of unspoken grief. What could possibly be inside that mundane bag that warrants such a primal reaction from a highly trained animal? The military police approach, hands instinctively moving to their weapons, uncertain whether they are confronting a threat to national security or witnessing the prelude to a deeply personal tragedy. They are about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous thing carried onto a military base isn't a bomb, but the raw, unaddressed burden of a deeply cherished, agonizing memory. The sun had barely crested the hangar roofs, casting long, stark shadows across the concrete of the military checkpoint, promising another routine, measured day. Yet the silence of the morning was abruptly, violently shattered. You witness the moment a transport bus halts, and as a lone soldier descends, his duffel bag slung low, the sheriff's highly trained K9 suddenly transitions from passive alertness to an explosive, trembling fury. The dog, named Atlas, locks its gaze onto the soldier's worn canvas bag, and a bark, sharp, insistent, vibrating with an almost frantic urgency, slices the air, demanding immediate attention from every soul within earshot. This was no ordinary detection alert, the officers knew. This was a primal, desperate sound, filled with an intensity that suggested immediate danger or profound discovery, forcing the military police personnel monitoring the perimeter to instantly stiffen and reach for their radios. Atlas did not merely indicate, he protested, planting his paws firmly and letting loose a torrent of noise directed solely at the silent figure who had just arrived, making the weight of the soldier's seemingly innocuous belongings feel heavier than any arsenal, forcing a sudden, frightening halt to all movement at the usually fluid entry point. The soldier, mid-stride, froze entirely, his body snapping taut with an involuntary reaction that betrayed more than simple surprise. His face, momentarily caught in the blinding morning light, showed initial confusion quickly overwritten by a deep, palpable sense of dread, as if a private, long-buried secret had just been violently unearthed by the K9's persistent accusation. The way the soldier gripped the strap of his duffel bag was not casual, it was possessive and defensive, an immediate sign that whatever was inside, whether legal or illegal, was of monumental significance to him, and now, under the fierce scrutiny of the K9, its presence felt damning. This moment of forced confrontation, where instinct meets discipline, often reveals deeper truths about the burdens we carry, truths that resonate far beyond the surface level of contraband or regulation. If you find yourself moved by these stories of unseen connection and the emotional weight of service, we invite you to subscribe and join our growing community, ensuring you never miss the powerful revelations that emerge when the shadows of human experience are illuminated by courage and loyalty. The intensity of Atlas's reaction was such that even his handler, Sheriff Deputy Hayes, began to sweat, realizing the gravity of the situation was escalating far beyond a routine inspection, sensing the animal was responding not just to a scent, but to an invisible, emotional signature emanating from the unsuspecting soldier. Every eye at the base was now fixed on the developing standoff, watching as the soldier remained transfixed, unable or unwilling to move, while the K9 continued its relentless, piercing alarm, its body language broadcasting a mixture of hostility and profound distress that was highly unusual for a dog trained in controlled detection. The quiet dignity of the early morning quickly devolved into a pressurized silence, punctuated only by the dog's relentless barking, creating a crucible of suspicion where every movement, every hesitation from the soldier was amplified into potential evidence of wrongdoing or deception. You can feel the thick tension hanging in the air, the collective realization among the uniformed officers that the stakes were suddenly much higher than a simple breach of protocol, contemplating what kind of odor or resonance could provoke such a visceral, almost mournful reaction from an animal whose composure was legendary among the local forces. The sunlight reflecting off the polished pavement now seemed too bright, too revealing, shining harshly upon the soldier and the bag that appeared to be the focus of the dog's overwhelming distress, turning a simple checkpoint into a stage for an unfolding drama with deeply personal stakes. The sheer volume and duration of the barking began to shake the confidence of the security detail, moving past standard procedure and into the realm of the deeply unsettling, suggesting a discovery so critical that the K9 felt compelled to break training protocols to communicate the magnitude of its find. Deputy Hayes struggled internally, issuing commands to quiet Atlas, commands that were ignored for the first time in their partnership. A clear indication that whatever the dog perceived, it was more important than obedience. Driven by a deep, ancient impulse, the deputy could only watch in stunned silence. The soldier's struggle to maintain composure was heartbreaking to witness. Though he hadn't yet been accused of anything, the weight of the dog's judgment seemed to crush him, forcing his shoulders to slump slightly, transforming him from a proud service member into a target of intense public suspicion. His eyes darted nervously between the frantic animal and the approaching military police, but there was a flicker, a momentary recognition, a haunting sadness that crossed his expression before he masked it again, suggesting the contents of the bag were tied not to criminality, but to profound, unspoken pain. As more personnel began to surround the scene, their movements precise and deliberate, the soldier realized that the opportunity for a quiet entry had vanished, replaced by the grim necessity of an immediate public confrontation regarding his mysterious duffel bag. The dog's continued intensity made retreat impossible and explanation necessary, but the words seemed to fail the soldier, who simply stood rooted, his posture communicating a story far more complex than the military police were initially prepared to hear or understand. The officers were closing in now, their hands resting lightly on their sidearms, transitioning the encounter from a routine inspection to a high-alert situation, compelled by the K9's unwavering certainty that something significant, perhaps dangerous, was present and needed immediate investigation. The energy exchange between the soldier and the dog, a mix of recognition and desperate urgency, was palpable, suggesting a connection that defied logical explanation, hinting at an imminent revelation that would shake the foundations of their immediate suspicion. Deputy Hayes finally placed a firm, restraining hand on Atlas's harness, not to pull him away, but to steady the trembling animal, recognizing that his fury was laced with a strange, almost pleading quality, as if the K9 were trying to warn the soldier rather than condemn him. This nuanced distress only heightened the sense of mystery surrounding the duffel bag, transforming it into a vessel of unknown consequence, forcing the officers to rethink the standard playbook for threat assessment. The time for simple questioning had passed, the only way to alleviate the mounting tension and satisfy the relentless judgment of the K9 was to expose the contents of the soldier's bag, whatever the consequences. As the military police drew near, issuing their first firm official command, the soldier took a deep, shuddering breath, knowing that the heavy shadow cast by his personal burden was about to be forcibly revealed under the harsh scrutiny of the checkpoint lights. The moment the military police squad approached, their movements disciplined and precise, the atmosphere tightened to a snapping point, forcing the soldier to stand utterly motionless, his face now a carefully constructed mask designed to hide the swirling vortex of panic and grief beneath. You could see the subtle shift in his stance, the protective tightening of his fingers around the worn fabric of his duffel bag strap, a silent plea to keep his private sorrow concealed from the harsh, judging gaze of the assembled security detail and the relentless accusation of the highly agitated service dog. Deputy Hayes tried one final time to pull Atlas away, attempting to restore order and reassert control over the chaotic scene, but the K9 resisted with surprising strength, transforming his insistent barks into deep, guttural whines, circling the soldier with an uncharacteristic, almost frantic agitation. This behavior was the most perplexing element for the officers, as it lacked the clinical, aggressive focus of a true threat alert. Instead, it carried a strange resonance of desperation, as if the animal were trying to communicate a nuanced message far beyond the binary alert system of safe or dangerous. The officers exchanged wary, uneasy glances, their training telling them to trust the dog's senses, but their experience warning them that this specific display defied the standard operational procedure for contraband or hostile intent detection. They realized with growing certainty that Atlas was exhibiting fear, or perhaps profound recognition, but crucially, that emotion was not aimed at the soldier, but seemed to be projected onto the contents of the bag itself, suggesting an intrinsic emotional connection to whatever lay hidden beneath the canvas. You understand the silent calculation passing between the senior MP officer and Deputy Hayes. Proceeding with force felt fundamentally wrong, given the dog's confused distress, yet ignoring the alert was an impossibility, leaving them stranded in an ethical and tactical limbo at the security checkpoint. The dog's persistent, almost pleading whines suggested a profound, non-hostile necessity for investigation, driving the human team to acknowledge that the traditional rules of engagement were insufficient to navigate this incredibly personal, unexpected situation unfolding before them. The soldier finally spoke, his voice dry and strained, attempting to offer an explanation that was immediately cut short by the MP commander, who needed immediate compliance, prioritizing security protocol over personal narrative, demanding that the bag be placed on the ground for inspection. The gravity of the situation pressed down on him, forcing the soldier to slowly, reluctantly release his grip on the strap, watching with a growing sense of vulnerability as his only shield against the world, his privacy, was about to be stripped. Away in the sterile glare of the military base, as the soldier carefully lowered the duffel bag, Atlas suddenly ceased his aggressive circling, his barks dissolving entirely into a soft, sorrowful sound, and he approached the bag tentatively, nosing the rough fabric with a reverence that was completely incompatible with alerting to explosives or narcotics. This profound shift from frantic alarm to quiet, almost mournful investigation confirmed the officer's growing suspicion. The threat was not physical, but something deeply emotional, a memory or a bond that the highly sensitive animal had somehow detected. The military police maintained their professional distance. Yet their posture softened perceptibly, their initial combat readiness yielding to a cautious curiosity, recognizing that the investigation was shifting from a search for threats to a search for understanding, prompted entirely by the non-verbal testimony of the K9. They held their breath, observing Atlas, who continued to sniff the bag meticulously, his tail slightly lowered in a posture of profound sadness rather than aggression, confirming the officer's gut feeling that this was an encounter rooted in deep human, or rather shared, loss. You can sense the soldier preparing himself for the inevitable intrusion, his eyes tightly closed for a brief moment, as if steeling himself against the exposure of his most sacred grief, knowing that the contents of that bag held not contraband, but the remnants of a life that was unjustly cut short, a burden he had carried alone for far too long. He understood that the dog wasn't accusing him of malice, but of holding on to something profoundly important that needed to be seen, needed to be honored, and perhaps needed to be released. Deputy Hayes finally pulled Atlas gently back, securing him on a short lead, but allowed him to remain close, recognizing that the dog was still integral to understanding the situation, acting less like a sniffer dog and more like a mourner sensing the proximity of a shared tragedy. The air was thick with expectation, the low morning sun now fully illuminating the scene, preparing to expose whatever secrets the canvas duffel bag had so carefully guarded during the soldiers' arduous journey back to base. The MP commander gave a silent nod to his subordinate, signaling the start of the inspection, yet the usual brisk confidence was replaced by a slow, almost respectful hesitation, acknowledging the unusual weight and emotional significance of the task now placed before them. This was no routine search. This felt like opening a crypt, a momentary pause where protocol and empathy clashed, but where empathy, guided by the K9's sorrowful demeanor, seemed to win out. As the subordinate officer approached the duffel, his movements deliberate and unhurried, the soldier remained silent, his gaze fixed on the ground, seemingly resigned to the complete exposure of his carefully maintained internal world. The officer knelt, his hand hovering over the zipper pull, feeling the immense unspoken pressure of the gathered audience, all waiting to see what could possibly provoke such a visceral, sorrowful response. From the legendary K9, the slow grinding sound of the zipper beginning to open was shockingly loud in the sudden, absolute silence of the base, marking the final transition from suspicion to imminent discovery, a sound that guaranteed that whatever was found inside would irrevocably alter the morning's expectations and the base's perception of the silent, grieving soldier. The officer's hand trembled slightly as he began to slowly pull the heavy metal zipper open, the rough canvas of the duffel bag protesting softly against the movement, releasing not the expected metallic scent of ordnance or the harsh chemical residue of illicit substances, but instead a faint, almost heartbreaking aroma of mothballs, old paper, and stale field dust. You could see the collective breath held by every person at the checkpoint, witnessing the anticlimax of the opening juxtaposed with the dramatic, sustained urgency of the K9's earlier alarm, bracing for the inevitable truth that lay concealed inside. As the bag was fully parted, dust motes danced lazily in the sudden, sharp shaft of morning light that pierced the interior of the hangar doorway, illuminating the carefully packed contents, which were instantly revealed to be anything but a threat to base security. Instead of weapons or contraband, the officers found a set of tightly folded uniforms, meticulously cleaned and pressed, laid out with a painful degree of care, suggesting these were not mere clothes, but sacred artifacts of a life once lived. Tucked beneath the uniforms, protected from the journey and the elements, were a bundle of meticulously preserved personal belongings, a collection of handwritten letters, tied neatly with faded military-issue string, their envelopes yellowed with age, and resting atop them, a single weathered photograph. The absence of danger was immediately apparent, yet the presence of such intensely personal memorabilia amplified the mystery surrounding the K9's distressed alert, making the situation even more emotionally complex than a simple security breach. The soldier, who had been holding his breath, let out a sharp, involuntary gasp when the photograph was revealed, a faded picture of two young men in uniform, laughing side by side against a desert background, confirming that the contents of the bag were related to a shared, profound past. The raw, exposed grief on the soldier's face was more damning than any piece of evidence could have been, demonstrating the immense emotional weight he had been carrying, a burden sensed instantly by the empathetic K9. The officers gently lifted the letters, careful not to disturb their fragile contents, confirming that the soldier was transporting something deeply private, a collection of memories and history belonging not to himself, but seemingly to another, a solemn duty he was fulfilling. Their trained suspicion began to dissipate, replaced by a profound, uncomfortable realization that they had just intercepted a pilgrimage of sorrow rather than a military infraction, forcing them to regard the soldier not as a suspect, but as a man bearing an unimaginable emotional load. Deep inside the bag, nestled beneath the bundle of letters and photograph, the officers located the final item, a small sealed metallic box, perhaps 7 inches long, plain and nondescript, but holding a magnetic fascination for the K9. It was this box, untouched by human hands until now, that immediately captured Atlas's entire focus once the surrounding canvas was pulled away, transforming the scene yet again. In a dramatic shift from his earlier frantic behavior, the K9 abruptly ceased all movement and sound, dropping instantly into a controlled, professional sit, his tail lowered close to the ground in a posture that conveyed deep reverence or profound mournfulness, his eyes locked with unblinking intensity on the small sealed container. This stillness after the chaos was more terrifying than the barking, suggesting that the critical scent, the central piece of the mystery, was housed within the confines of the metal box. The soldier's entire body seemed to deflate, his internal resolve finally giving way to the exposure, his breath catching in his throat as if witnessing the ultimate unveiling of his greatest vulnerability, realizing that the protective seal of the box, was the only thing standing between his private grief and the public gaze. He knew instinctively that the true revelation of the morning, the specific connection between him, the bag, and the mournful dog, was about to be uncovered. You watch as the MP commander cautiously picks up the metal box, its surface cold and unadorned, turning it over in his hands, feeling the unexpected weight and solidity of the container, realizing that whatever essential item it protected was important enough to warrant its own specialized, sealed vessel. The curiosity of the officers was now at its peak, driven not by suspicion but by the intense, sorrowful focus of the highly intuitive service dog. Atlas remained fixed on the box, a slight, continuous trembling, running through his powerful body, his gaze unwavering, communicating a desperate, silent message to his handler that transcended the normal parameters of scent detection, hinting at a connection that was intimate, personal, and heartbreakingly familiar. He wasn't signaling danger, he was signaling profound recognition and loss. The base held its collective breath for what felt like an eternity, waiting for the officer to find the means to open the sealed box, knowing that the contents would finally provide the key to Atlas's bizarre emotional behavior throughout the entire confrontation. The slow realization that this entire incident was a confrontation with grief orchestrated by a dog settled heavily over the assembled personnel. The officer looked from the box to the soldier, then to the K9, recognizing the silent request for explanation, an explanation that was now vital to understanding why the sheriff's K9 had risked official reprimand to alert on a simple metal container containing what was almost certainly not a weapon, but a painful, deeply missed memory. The soldier would have to speak now, and the truth would finally begin its slow, halting journey toward the light. The MP commander turned back to the soldier, the sealed box held loosely in his hand, offering a silent prompt for the necessary explanation, recognizing that the situation had moved beyond mere security protocol and into a realm requiring genuine human dialogue. The soldier took a shaky breath, finally beginning to speak, his voice initially rough and halting, weighted by months of suppressed sorrow and guilt, detailing the immense personal burden contained within the canvas duffel. He explained that the letters, the photograph, and the belongings belonged not to him, but to his late best friend, Sergeant Elias, a fellow service member who had been tragically lost months earlier during a mission overseas. This painful admission confirmed the officer's growing suspicion that the contents were sacred remnants of a profound connection, transforming the silent soldier into a heartbroken messenger, fulfilling a sacred, if emotionally paralyzing, duty. The soldier confessed the reason for his delay in delivering the belongings to Elias's family, a deep, consuming guilt over his friend's death, a survivor's remorse that had paralyzed him, making the act of handing over the tangible evidence of Elias's life an unbearable final acknowledgement of loss. He had returned to the base with the intent of finally making the delivery, only to be stopped by the very force of destiny manifested in the form of the unrelenting K9. This painful, raw honesty stripped away the last layers of military formality, revealing the deeply human core beneath the uniform, exposing the soldier's fragile journey through grief. If you have ever experienced the profound complexity of survivors' guilt or understood the weight of unfinished goodbyes, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. How do we find the strength to honor those we've lost? As the soldier spoke, his words cracking with emotion, Atlas the K9 displayed an astonishing, profound empathy, inching closer with slow, deliberate steps toward the kneeling soldier, sensing the overwhelming weight of the grief he had carried across continents. The dog did not bark or whine, but instead pressed his massive head lightly against the soldier's knee, offering a silent, unexpected comfort that transcended the barriers of species and rank. Deputy Hayes watched in stunned silence, recognizing that Atlas was responding not to a training cue or a detected scent profile, but to the palpable anguish radiating from the soldier, demonstrating an awareness of emotional distress that spoke volumes about the depth of the canine human bond. The dog's subtle physical comfort served as a powerful nonverbal validation of the soldier's truth, confirming his sincerity in a way that no official interrogation ever could. The sight of the powerful service dog offering solace to the grief-stricken soldier deeply moved the military police, who stood back respectfully, recognizing that they were witnessing a moment of shared catharsis, a spontaneous intervention orchestrated by an animal attuned to the echoes of sorrow. The entire base seemed to soften, the harsh formality of the checkpoint dissolving into a shared acknowledgement of the cost of service and the burdens carried in its aftermath. The soldier gently reached down, his fingers lightly brushing the soft fur on Atlas's head, a movement driven by an instinctual need for connection, recognizing that this powerful dog understood his pain on a level the surrounding humans were still struggling to comprehend. This small gesture sealed the bond between them, two beings connected by the unseen threads of profound, shared loss, drawn together by the gravity of the metal box. He explained that the metal box contained the single most important item of Elias's remaining belongings, the one item he couldn't bear to look at until he was ready to complete his mission, hinting that its contents held the most direct connection to his friend's final moments. This sealed container was the focal point of both the soldier's paralyzing guilt and the canine's relentless focus, demanding immediate resolution. The MP commander nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting a newfound respect for the soldier's agonizing duty, realizing that the immediate threat was not to the base, but to the soldier's own fractured soul, and that the opening of the box was necessary for both investigative closure and personal healing. He knew, however, that he couldn't open the final item himself. The gravity of the situation required the soldier's permission and presence. He carefully offered the sealed box back to the soldier, a silent gesture of trust and respect, indicating that this final act of unveiling needed to be a shared moment, a necessary step toward the truth that the K9 had fought so desperately to reveal. The tension returned, thick and expectant, as the soldier received the cool, unyielding metal container. The soldier looked down at the box, then at the comforting presence of Atlas pressed against his knee, understanding that the time for delay and denial was over. The K9's intense reaction to the sealed container demanded an immediate answer, promising a revelation that would connect them all irrevocably. He slowly reached for the latch, preparing to expose the final, heartbreaking secret. With a profound sense of inevitability, the soldier placed the small sealed box on the pavement and, guided by the silent, intense focus of the K9, slowly worked the delicate latch, finally breaking the seal that had protected the contents for so many agonizing months. The clicking sound of the latch releasing was sharp and distinct in the otherwise complete silence of the base, a noise that signaled the end of the mystery and the beginning of a startling, deeply personal revelation for every person gathered. As the lid was lifted, the morning light spilled into the small container, revealing not a hidden note or a piece of jewelry, but a single small regulation-issue military dog tag, tarnished with time and wear, yet holding an immense, disproportionate emotional gravity. The entire focus of the base shifted instantly to this simple piece of engraved metal, recognizing that its significance far outweighed its physical size, acting as the key to the K9's relentless agitation. The MP commander carefully leaned in to read the inscription. His voice hushed as he spoke the name aloud, Sergeant Elias V. Jensen. The name echoed through the stillness, immediately confirming the dog tag belonged to the soldier's fallen best friend, the identity of the life tragically lost months earlier, solidifying the emotional connection of the entire duffel bag's contents. But the final, staggering truth unfolded in the next heart-stopping moment. Deputy Hayes, standing rigid behind his K9, suddenly recognized the name. Sergeant Elias V. Jensen was not just a fallen soldier, he was Atlas's original handler, the partner who had trained him, lived with him, and walked beside him before. The dog was reassigned to the sheriff's department after Elias's death. The K9's intense distress was instantly and profoundly justified. Atlas, upon hearing the name spoken aloud and feeling the close proximity of the tag, let out a soft, trembling whine that vibrated with recognition and profound pain, a sound that tore at the hearts of every hardened service member present. His powerful nostrils flared as he inhaled deeply, recognizing the distinct, deeply familiar scent of his beloved former partner, held captive within the cold surface of the metal tag. You can feel the wave of realization wash over the base. Atlas hadn't been alerting to contraband or danger. He had been desperately alerting to the presence of his handler's memory, to the scent of the man he had loved and lost, urging the soldier to reveal the item that carried the strongest trace of their shared past. His frantic barks were a cry of recognition, his circling a demand for reunion. The entire military checkpoint seemed to fall silent at once, a deep, reverent quiet descending as every eye turned to the dog and the unearthed dog tag, as if honoring the unbreakable, invisible bond that had been forcibly revived in that stark, sunlit moment. All suspicion evaporated, replaced by a deep, shared empathy for the grieving animal and the soldier, who unknowingly carried this poignant catalyst for emotional reckoning. Deputy Hayes knelt immediately, gently embracing Atlas, realizing the immense depth of the animal's grief and his heroic, instinctual act of bringing this unfinished goodbye to light, acknowledging that the dog had followed a higher emotional law that day. He confirmed the painful truth to the MP commander, cementing the revelation that the soldier's arrival was not a security breach, but a reunion foretold by scent and loyalty. The soldier, witnessing the K9's deep, visceral reaction to the dog tag, the sudden, agonizing recognition in the animal's eyes, finally understood the full scope of his painful journey and the true meaning of the K9's intervention. He hadn't just been bringing back belongings, he had been bringing home a missing piece of the dog's life, fulfilling a cosmic loop of loyalty. The dog tag, previously a cold piece of metal, was transformed into a conduit of memory, a physical link to a powerful relationship tragically severed, now holding the power to unite two remaining mourners, one human, one canine, in a profound shared moment of grief and remembrance. The MP commander gently placed the box and the dog tag back down on the pavement, stepping back to allow the space for this intensely personal reunion, recognizing that this was a moment of profound, shared service history that required respect and silence above all else. The protocols of the base yielded entirely to the raw, demanding truth of the heart. This was not a finding of suspicion, but a discovery of deep, enduring loyalty, forcing everyone present to confront the powerful, non-verbal connection that binds comrades in service, whether they wear boots or paws, and to witness the painful beauty of an unfinished bond, finally achieving a temporary, heartbreaking closure. Overwhelmed by the flood of recognition and the shattering emotional release, the soldier finally knelt fully on the concrete pavement, his military discipline momentarily forgotten, sinking down beside the stunned K9. There was no need for further explanation, no lingering suspicion, and absolutely no reprimand. In that singular moment, there was only shared, silent grief, a profound communion between two living beings who had loved the same man with a fierce, unwavering devotion. You witnessed the soldier slowly reach out his hand, gently stroking the fur of Atlas's massive neck, a soothing touch that the dog accepted instantly, responding with a deep, shuddering sigh that seemed to release months of pent-up mourning. Atlas, in turn, lifted a heavy paw and rested it softly on the soldier's forearm, a gesture of mutual acknowledgement and shared sorrow that cemented their instantaneous, heartbreaking bond forged in the crucible of loss. The officers of the military police and the sheriff's department stood back, their heads slightly bowed, their initial professional detachment entirely eroded by the raw, undeniable evidence of enduring loyalty playing out before them. They realized that the greatest threat discovered that morning was the threat of overwhelming sadness, a memory so potent it could literally stop an entire base in its tracks and bring hardened men to tears. What they had discovered inside the duffel bag wasn't a danger to the base, but a memory, a sacred link that had orchestrated a painful, necessary meeting between the two remaining pieces of Sergeant Elias Jensen's life. This moment forced the entire security team to confront how deeply loyalty, loss, and the silent, agonizing weight of unfinished goodbyes echo through every uniform, human or canine, demanding recognition. The base remained in hushed reverence, witnessing the pure, unadulterated healing taking place between the soldier and the K9, recognizing that this animal, once frantic with misunderstood distress, was now offering the only true comfort available to the guilt-ridden soldier. Atlas had served his partner one last time by forcing the exposure of the painful truth, allowing the soldier to finally begin the process of laying down his heavy burden. If this deeply emotional story of loyalty and shared grief has touched your heart and resonated with the power of connection that transcends species, please take a moment to like this video, supporting our mission to share these profound narratives of human and animal courage. The discovery forced the officers to realize that some connections are so strong they defy distance, time, and even death, manifesting in the most unexpected and dramatic ways at a routine checkpoint. Deputy Hayes knelt beside his dog and the soldier, sharing a few quiet words with the grief-stricken man, not about protocol, but about Elias, confirming the depth of the partnership Atlas and Elias had shared, further solidifying the tragic, beautiful alignment of the morning's events. The soldier's face, etched with months of pain, finally showed a flicker of relief, understanding that he was no longer alone in carrying the memory. The entire episode served as a powerful, unexpected lesson for every member of the military personnel present, reminding them that true service involves not just vigilance and strength, but also profound compassion and the recognition of the unseen emotional battles their comrades fight every day. The dog's instinct had brought dignity back to a fallen soldier's legacy and peace to a surviving friend's soul. The soldier eventually stood up, his posture noticeably lighter, the dog tag finally secured in his own pocket, no longer a source of guilt, but a symbol of shared memory and the unexpected comfort of a four-legged comrade. He thanked the officers, his voice steady now, ready to complete his journey and deliver the remaining belongings to Elias's family, strengthened by the K9's intervention. Atlas remained close to the soldier for a few precious minutes longer, his tail now wagging softly, a quiet acknowledgement that the mission, though painful, was finally nearing its righteous conclusion, having achieved the necessary emotional resolution for both the dog and the human messenger. The scene slowly dissolved back into routine, but the silence remained different. It was a respectful silence, one born of profound shared understanding rather than mere compliance, a poignant echo of the loyal heart that had briefly stopped the movement of the entire base. The soldier walked away, no longer a suspect, but a mourner comforted, escorted by the quiet respect of the assembled personnel. The true find that morning wasn't a security threat, but a powerful testament to enduring loyalty, revealed through the unshakable grief of a working dog, forever altering the way the base would view routine checks and the silent battles of those who serve. What began as a security alert ended as a spiritual homecoming, mediated by the purest form of loyalty imaginable. You saw how the dog, Atlas, used his primal instinct not for detection, but for connection, shattering the rigid facade of military protocol to bring two grieving souls together. The true measure of the discovery wasn't the small cold dog tag found inside the sealed box, but the magnitude of the bond that tag represented, a bond that survived loss and distance, manifesting as a desperate plea from a faithful heart. This story serves as a profound reminder that true strength isn't found in suppressing emotion, but in acknowledging the deep, enduring ties that bind us, whether we walk on two legs or four. The soldier, burdened by guilt, found unexpected absolution. The base, briefly shocked, was reminded of the deep, unseen sacrifices made by its members, and Atlas, the valiant K9, finally found a measure of peace by touching the memory of the partner he thought he had lost forever. The silence that fell over the base that morning was not merely the absence of noise, but a shared, respectful acknowledgement of the cost of service and the enduring power of love. May we all be guided by the unwavering loyalty and profound intuition of a heart that refuses to forget.